Hello, welcome to another video where we're going to talk about comics, specifically writing comics. So, a while back, 10 years ago-ish, more than 10 years ago, I made my first webcomic, and it was called Sovereign, the most amazing comic ever. And it was not the most amazing comic ever. There was issues that it had. Now, obviously, that title was tongue-in-cheek. It has to do with the narrator of the story being very verbose, very self-centered. You can read the comic. It's currently being re-released on Comic Fury, so if you want to check out what I'm talking about, that's where you can find it. Link down below. But that's besides the point. I wanted to talk about the 3 things that I did wrong as a writer when I was writing Sovereign, and what I would have changed. I think the first thing that was an issue for me was overconfidence. I was definitely overconfident in myself, and I think some amount of confidence is good. I think I had a strong sense of what I wanted to do. I felt like I could do it. I wanted to prove that I wouldn't go on hiatus. I knew that hiatus is kind of like the killer of webcomics, and that's something I didn't want to do, so that was my main goal, was to update frequently, powerfully, and I did that. I did do that portion of it. But when it came to getting my writing critiqued, when it came to like negative feedback that I got about my comic, I definitely didn't take it in all that well. I didn't synthesize it well. I tended to hear a complaint like, oh, like the narrator goes on too much, and I would hear that and I'd be like, that's stupid. Like I'm better than this. And then I would have a reaction where I would make it even more verbose. And generally speaking, I was just kind of bad at that. That said, like, not all of the feedback I got was all that great. Some people wanted me to turn it into a more politically minded story, which is very weird for a fantasy comedy story, but you know, that's besides the point. Like, I think I could have synthesized information that I got earlier on, and I could have done better with that. And that's definitely the first thing that comes to mind when I think of like what I could have done better with Sovereign. The second big issue that Sovereign has is that the beginning of it is not structured well. I was very bad at doing this. I was bad at putting all of the details together and creating something that's like comprehensive, like understandable, flows into the story. I like the pace of the first chapter, but everything kind of drags during the middle, and that has some things to do with like general structure problems. But I think one of the biggest reasons that this happened, and I think this could happen to a lot of you, is that I was very familiar with my characters and I knew all of their ins and outs. These were my OCs, I RP'd with them, my friends knew them, which is another aspect to this. My friends knew all these characters and we just loved them, and we loved all the ins and outs of them. And so when it came to introducing the comic, I didn't do a good job of it. I took a lot of details for granted, and I didn't set them up properly. I think this is a very common mistake that I see, something that people definitely settle into. Like, bigger artists have an issue with this because they'll share their character to all of their like social media, and everyone knows this character. And a lot of times when you read a story like that, and those were the kinds of stories that inspired me, if you read a story like that, but you don't follow the social media around it, the actual comic can suffer because there's a lot of detail in the story that's taken for granted. It's almost like reading a fan fiction of like your social media character version of it. It's weird, where you have to have all of this lore and background for it. And some characters I did better than others with Sovereign, but I had a whole bunch of world building that I worked on and I built into the world of Sovereign, and I had all these characters that I made, but I never dived into them and I never gave them the space to like express themselves. The biggest version of this kind of failing is with Zoltar, who is a main character, and he has a curse upon him that means that well, like we get into the one half of the curse where his assistant feels pain when they're separated. He starts like nose bleeding, ear bleeding, blood everywhere. It's a whole mess. But I never explained the second half of the curse where like Zoltar is supposed to experience Eris's emotions and feel them himself. And that was like a huge portion of the curse. And there's like vestiges of it in how the panels are designed, but I never revealed the fact. And that's just like an example of like knowing my characters too well, but never putting it on the page. And I think a lot of that happened with Sovereign. The third thing that definitely influenced everything and is definitely one of the biggest things that I harp on about when talking about how to start your comic is that Sovereign was just way too big. It was way too big of a story, and at the last minute I got very tired of making it. I realized how long it would take to finish this, and a lot of our other comics were becoming a lot more popular and much more engaging for us, and Sovereign was kind of like this albatross on our neck, and we just didn't really want to work on it, but we wanted it to finish. So at the very last minute, I cut it down 50%. It was initially going to be 1,000 pages long, and I cut it down to about 500 pages. And I think most issues with Sovereign kind of come from this fact, where I very much rushed the ending. The beginning drags for a very long time because it's setting up for a story that's meant to be a lot longer. It doesn't set it up well, as I was saying, but it was supposed to be a lot longer than it was. And that was like the main issue that Sovereign suffered from. And it's a main issue that a lot of comics can suffer from, because a lot of us have these huge ideas for comics, like these huge, far-reaching stories that will go on forever, all these little scenes that we want to write. And with Sovereign, I don't think we had as much passion for it as a story that we thought we did, I guess, and it ended up just needing to be cut down, and that ended up affecting like everything in terms of story. Like all of those mistakes early on that I could have fixed, that I could have fleshed out, that I could have brought in the details that got left out before, they never got added and fixed. An example of like actually fixing it is in the Magpie, where I realized I did miss out on some key details, and because I really like Magpie and I've learned that it's okay to just kind of extend stories and really give them the space they deserve, and the fact that like there is an audience for Magpie in a way that Sovereign, when I was writing it, there wasn't. I want to like actually sit down and flesh it out and give it the ending that it deserves. So that is where I've learned. But generally speaking, like it's better to shoot for a smaller story, and it's likely that it'll end up being a lot bigger than you expect it will be. The same thing is with big stories, is big stories will end up being way bigger than you ever expect them to be. So you just got to be careful with them, and I recommend just starting smaller when you do a comic. And by small, I don't mean two pages, 20 pages, 30 pages. Like, I mean 250 pages. 250 pages is a small comic, okay? It is enough to tell a big story, generate a bit of an audience, updating twice a week or once a week. It'll still be a few years, but it is small in terms of comic. I guess it's a more mid-sized comic. I'm dealing with a lot of comics that are like multiple thousands of pages long at this point, so like 250 pages is very small in terms of comics. So, you know, that's like a single graphic novel type size, and I would shoot for like a graphic novel size, if not for the fact that you can publish them later into like a book size and it'll look nice and you'll feel very accomplished. Side note, making my first webcomic a full color comic might have been a mistake too, because it's very difficult to do it and it's hard to print. And if your comic doesn't super pop off, it can be very hard to fund a print run of a full color comic. Just something to keep in mind. And anyways, yeah, thank you for listening. I'm trying to get more people in the Discord, so if you're looking to find more people to discuss comics with, we have a huge creative chat thing going on. Okay, it's not huge, it's kind of middling. We have a nice sizable amount of people chit-chatting in there, and we do weekly voice chat calls. And if you want to go even further, you can support us on Patreon. And if you there's like a new thing on Patreon where you can gift Patreon memberships. So if you join up as a free member, there's always a chance that that happens for you. And then you could end up on the, exclusive Patreon calls. That's pretty cool. I think that's neat. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. It's always lovely to see you. And I'll see you tomorrow for my next video, because we do this thing daily for some reason. I don't know.